We think about blessings. This past week on Thursday and Friday, I was at my farm in Pennsylvania. I love being there this time of year. All the crops are being harvested. Combines are working. All the farms around are bringing in corn, mostly corn, wheat, oats. And as my farm sits up on kind of a high plateau, so I can look out and see for miles around all the farming activity that's going on, and huge tractor-trailer loads of corn being hauled out of that area. They're having one of the best harvests they've had in years. Great abundance, great blessing. And the weather was beautiful, pretty much like it is today. Cold nights, just like here. But I found myself being very grateful for being surrounded by such abundance and such blessing. And I was very thankful in my heart. I was also thinking about this gospel reading today, which contrasts the Pharisee, who thinks very highly of himself, and the tax collector, whom Jesus describes as being very humble. And clearly, the Pharisee articulates how he lives his life in a very kind of upstanding way and has a lot of blessing in his life, and he realizes that kind of the unwritten word there is that he deserves that abundant blessing because he's so good. And then the tax collector basically says, "Have mercy on me, a sinner." And as I was reading and thinking about this and thinking about the abundant blessing of this harvest that was surrounding me, I really found myself saying to God, "Have mercy on me, a sinner. I really don't deserve this abundance that you're pouring out on me. You know, I'm an okay person and all, but this is pretty overwhelming. Who am I that I am this lucky, this fortunate to experience this kind of a harvest that is of such great value?" I think for many of us in the living of our lives, there is a rich harvest. There are blessings that are poured out in any of a number of ways. And yet there's something in our life that trips us up and blocks our ability to understand the blessing. A lot of us have been reading the book, The Prodigal God, this September and October, and we understand the young son who left home and who made a lot of bad decisions and realizes that he has sinned against God and his family and himself, and he comes back to his father. And we also have talked a lot about the elder son, the one who was really good, who stayed home and worked hard and really enabled the father to survive by his devotion and his loyalty. And yet, we see the example of the father's reckless forgiveness. Prodigal means reckless. Of his younger son, he embraces him and welcomes him home. And the older son, who is 98% wonderful, can't get beyond his anger with the younger son and forgive his brother. He cannot forgive. He's not about to forgive. And this is going to stick in his system forever. He won't let go. The younger son basically comes home, acknowledges his sin. "I am not worthy to be your son." kind of like the tax collector in the temple. I am not worthy. Just let me hire on as a hired man. I so regret everything I did. That's what's in the younger son's heart. He kind of bears his soul. And he's very authentic, very genuine, very real. And then you have the older son who just cannot get beyond the tripwire of his anger. You know, we all have trips when we lose our tempers. I actually lost my temper on Friday. I have wonderful neighbors around my farm in Pennsylvania, and we all kind of look out for each other, and we do favors for each other. And I know a lot of these farm families have wood stoves. I don't have a wood stove because I'm not there to put the wood in. I have forest and woodlands, and I like to keep the stone walls trimmed clean, and trees have a habit of growing over the edges of fields. And for those of you who have owned land, you know that the farther out the branches reach, you lose the productivity of the edge of the field. So 3 years ago, I told my one neighbor, if you will cut down those 6 trees along that stone wall, I'd be more than happy to give you those trees for your wood stove. And I said, it's a win-win. I get my field back and you get some wood, and he was more than happy to do it. So 3 years ago, he cut down those trees, and he laid them in my field. Of course, they need to cure. You know, firewood needs to cure. They're still laying in my field. And for 3 years, guess what? My blood pressure has been going up around the trees in my field. And I stopped by the other day and I said, I'd really like to have my field back, and I realize those trees are perfect to burn this winter. They'll be nice and dry. And I trust you're going to be taking them out of the field. And he wasn't really engaging with me, and I said, you know what? My other neighbor has asked about the trees in my field. He really needs some dry firewood for the winter. If those trees are not out of my field by the end of October, I'm going to give them to so-and-so. Oh, he was aghast. You call yourself a minister. Here I did all that work. I cut down those trees, and now you're going to give them to somebody else? What kind of person are you? You can imagine I lost my temper. I had a tripwire. And I said, you know, I don't know anybody else who would be this kind to you. I feel like you've been walking all over me for the past 3 years. I gave you the trees in good faith. I didn't write down in the footnote, you must remove the trees by X date, but 3 years is enough time. Take them away, please. Or else I'm going to get rid of them. I need my field, the edge of my field back. Well, before I left my farm, I got a couple of phone calls from my neighbors. And you know how little farming communities are? I understand you're going to take his trees away from him. What's going on? Well, the whole neighborhood is chit-chatting now about